This episode of the Grand Rising Show was brought to you by Autochthonous Assembly, where the real work is. Autochthonous Assembly is a gathering of the minds that do the work. Now, for many of our first-time subscribers and first-time visitors, you may be wondering who Autochthonous Assembly are. You can find this information about our mission statement and our core values on the website at autochthonousassembly.com/about. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, or your family tree, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineages and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Our core values are the foundation of our company, which is essential to our success and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. Those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is knowing and doing what is right; respect, which is treating others the way you want to be treated; responsibility, which is embracing opportunities to contribute; and servant leadership, which is serving the common good. Now, at Autochthonous Assembly, we have a couple of goals here. And our first goal and foremost of the reason why we do everything that we do is to ensure that we help you do your genealogy and connect back to your tribe and find out where you are from. Everything that we do from the standpoint of the Grand Rising Show and all the information that's posted on the website is dedicated to that one specific purpose, helping you find your genealogy, find your relatives, find your family so that you will know exactly who you are. And if you choose to, tie back into your tribe, whether that tribe is a Native American tribe, an American Indian tribe, whether it's allowing you to determine which house in Africa that you belong to, or what clan of Scandinavia or Europe or France that you belong to. Either way, our goal is to do just that, help you find out who you are so you know exactly where to start. We are not here to tell you who you are, and we're not here to tell you who you are not. We're just here to help you discover your beginnings. Another one of our missions is to help you become financially independent so that you can help your generations for the next 7 generations and be able to put a stable foundation for you and your relatives. And if you should choose to use this information that we provide free of charge to help not only yourself, but your community and your tribe, then we'll do everything in our power to make sure that gets done as well. And remember, our goal here is to make sure that we help you get exposed to this information to put you in the best situation possible. So now what I'm going to do now is return it back over to the panel to see if there was anything I missed, and I will go ahead and get set up so we can get ready and get digging into this information. Panel, take it away.
Hi. Grand Rising, Grand Rising. How's everyone doing this Rising?
Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well.
Mic check 2212. Peace, everybody. Peace to the panel. Peace to the chat.
Can everyone hear us okay?
And can we get some ones in the chat if everyone can hear us clearly and well?
Playback seems okay for me.
Mic check 1212. Everybody good?
I think so. Not sure. Can't see.
Yep, we got some ones. We good.
All right. Everybody night was blissful, peaceful, at the least.
Peaceful at the least. It's peaceful.
All right. Well, on today's show, a CAD Grand Rising show, we basically continuing on what we started on yesterday on who were the Spanish. Now we're moving into Spanish colonization of the Americas, where they went, what they did, where they went. And the main purpose of all of this is so when people start looking for their stories, they'll have a better idea of who to look at for the information, what archives to get it from. And again, like we said, doing the best to do our part. Nocella, you got the chance to post the links in the chat?
Yep, doing that right now.
All righty. Let me just see who we got out here this rising. Peace Ladarian Woods. Peace Oak Cliff. LJ Free. Macadon 1. Muskogee G. Michael Brown Harris. Joe 47. Copper Chopper 803. Mike Easton. And if I forgot anyone this rising, sorry about that. I think I called everyone I seen come in the room.
You forgot me? No, I'm just playing.
Oh, Grand Rising Brittany. Trying to get me in trouble now. Grand Rising Copper Color.
I think you'd be skipping names on purpose if you ask me.
Don't do that.
Well, ain't nobody asking, so I won't.
You kind of already did, but never mind.
Hey, what kind of math is that, fam?
No sellout. You're able to start from the first link or?
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the Zoom. We ain't
Oh,
on Zoom
I did
right
the
now.
same thing twice. Don't feel bad.
I'm over here searching like, man, I can't get back on this call. Where's the mute button?
A whole nother call and wondering why nobody was there.
I'm just gonna leave the mute off for right now. That was an ordeal. Yes, I could do that. Where's the first link? Oh, I posted it. All right. Man, we are on the Treaty of Zaragoza. right? Or the Treaty of Saragossa. Zaragoza. Mic check. Peace, everybody. The Treaty of Zaragoza, also referred to as the Capitulation of Zaragoza, was a peace treaty between Castile and Portugal, signed on 22 April 1529 by King John III and Emperor Charles V in the Aragonese city of Zaragoza. The treaty defined the areas of Castilian and Portuguese influence in Asia in order to resolve the, quote, Moluccas issue. Is that correct? Anybody? Okay, unquote. Which had arisen because both kingdoms claimed the Moluccas Islands for themselves, asserting that it was within their area of influence established by the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494. The conflict between 1520, when the expeditions of both kingdoms reached the Pacific Ocean, because no agreed meridian of longitude had been established in the Orient. So conflict started in 1520. All right, we're gonna move to the background of the Moluccas issue. In 1494, Castile and Portugal signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, dividing the world into two areas of exploration and colonization, the Castilian and the Portuguese. It proclaimed a meridian in the Atlantic Ocean, with areas of west of the line exclusive to Spain and east of the line to Portugal. In 1511, Malacca, then the center of Asian trade, was conquered for Portugal by Alfonso de Albuquerque.
Hold on,
Getting to know, yep. Say that again. You said
what year?
1511. This is 1511. Malacca.
And technically, they in China in 1511.
That's what it sounds like. I mean, they talk about these Asians right now.
All right, you can continue.
All right, so in 1511, Malacca, the center of Asian trade, was conquered for Portugal by Alfonso de Albuquerque. Getting to know the secret location of the so-called quote-unquote Spice Islands, the Banda Islands, Ternate, and Tidor in the Moluccas, then the single world source of nutmeg and cloves and the main purpose for travels in the Indian Ocean. Albuquerque sent an expedition led by Antonio de Alburu in search of the Moluccas, particularly the Banda Islands. The expedition arrived in early 1512, passing en route through the Lesser Sunda Islands, being the first Europeans to get there. Before reaching Banda, the explorers visited the islands of Buru, Ambon, and Saram. Later, after a separation forced by a shipwreck, Abreu's vice captain, Francisco Serrao, sailed to the north but his ship sank off Ternate, where he obtained a license to build a Portuguese fortress factory, the Fort de São João Baptista de Ternate. I'm probably butchering these words, but somebody else read it. Letters describing the quote-unquote Spice Islands from Serrao to Ferdinand Magellan, who were friends and possibly cousins, helped Magellan persuade the Spanish crown to finance the first circumnavigation of the earth. On 6 November 1521, the Moluccas, the quote-unquote cradle of all spices, were reached from the east by Magellan's fleet, sailing then under Juan Sebastian Elcano at the service of the Spanish crown. Before Magellan and Serrao could meet in the Moluccas, Serrao died on the island of Ternate almost at the same time Magellan was killed in the Battle of Mactan in the Philippines. They must be twins.
You know what's interesting so far?
Synchronized killings.
What's interesting about this? This is the Spanish Empire invading China, right?
Mm-hmm.
But didn't they say Columbus or Cristobal Colombo left to find an easier trade route to China? Obviously, they knew there was another way. Just pointing that out. That's it.
After the Magellan Elcano expedition 1519 to 1522, Charles V sent a second expedition led by Garcia Joffre de Loaiza to colonize the islands based on the assertion that they were in the Castilian zone under the Treaty of Tordesillas. After some difficulties, the expedition reached the Moluccas, docking at Tidore, where the Spanish established a fort. There was inevitable conflict with the Portuguese, who were already established in Ternate. After a year of fighting, the Spanish suffered a defeat, but despite that, nearly a decade of skirmishes over the possession of the island ensued. And moving on to the conference or the treaty. Let's see. The conference of Badajoz Elvas. In 1524, both kingdoms organized the, quote, Junta de Badajoz Elvas, unquote, to resolve the dispute. Each crown appointed 3 astronomers and cartographers, 3 pilots, and 3 mathematicians who formed a committee to establish the exact location of the anti-meridian of Tordesillas, and the intention was to divide the whole world into 2 equal hemispheres. The Portuguese delegation sent by King. All right, sir.
Back up and say that part again.
I don't want. Okay. Each crown appointed 3 astronomers and cartographers, 3 pilots, and 3 mathematicians who formed a committee to establish the exact location of the anti-meridian of Tordesillas, and the intention was to divide the whole world into 2 equal hemispheres.
So here's a question. What year was this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me roll back. 1524. Earlier, the Magellan and the Elcano expedition was 1519 to 22, and this is now 1524. Junta de Badajoz Elvas.
So
See.
we still talking about the Iberian Peninsula, aka Hispaniola, aka Spain, right?
Yep. This is Spain and Portugal dividing the world into 2. 1524.
Portugal, Port of Gaelic, Germans. So why is there no talk of Columbus and we already in 1524? What happened? Where he at?
Exactly. And if you notice, in 1511, they were already on the islands in China. So why would they need Christopher Columbus to set up a trade route if they was already doing it with China?
Y'all being mean early.
Hey, I'll just call it what sticks at.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can continue. Just something to think about on that, because that is weird. We're in 1524.
Posting this link again. All right. The Portuguese delegation sent by King João, maybe the third, João the third, included Antonio de Azevedo, Coutinho. I see what y'all made me read. Diogo Lopes de Sequeira, Lopo Homem, a cartographer and cosmographer, and Simão Fernandes. I know that word. What? TMH, can you see that?
Give me a moment. Hold on.
Okay, no, I got it. Okay, I see it. I can see it. Thanks. The plenipotentiary from, I've never seen that word before, but I see it's a few words in one. The plenipotentiary from Portugal was Mercurio Gatin, and those from Spain were Count Mercurio Gatin. Well, no screen switching on its own. Garcia de Loisa, Bishop of Osma, and Garcia de Padilla, Grand Master of the Order of Calatrava. Former Portuguese cartographer Diogo Ribeiro was part of the Spanish delegation. Man, they picked the toughest Spanish names for me to read today. An amusing story is said to have taken place at this meeting. According to the contemporary Castilian writer Peter Martyr de Anguera, a small boy stopped the Portuguese delegation and asked if they intended to divide up the world. The delegation answered that they were. The boy responded by baring his backside and suggesting that they draw the line through his butt crack. I don't believe that. The board met several times at Badajoz and Elvas without reaching an agreement. Geographic knowledge at that time was inadequate for an accurate assignment of longitude, and each group chose maps or globes that showed the islands to be in their own hemisphere. John III and Charles V agreed to not send anyone else to the Moluccas until it was established in whose hemisphere they were situated. Between 1525 and 1528, Portugal sent several expeditions to the area around the Moluccas. Gomez de Sequeira and Diogo de Rocha were sent by the governor of Ternate, Jorge de Meneses, to the Celebes, also already visited by Simão de Abreu in 1523, and to the north. The expeditioners were the first Europeans to reach the Caroline Islands, which they named, quote, Islands de Sequeira, unquote. Explorers such as Martim Alfonso de Melo, 1522 to 24, and possible Gomez Sequeira, 1526 to 1527, cited the Aru Islands and the Tanimbar Islands. In 1526, Jorge de Meneses reached northwestern Papua New Guinea, landing in Biak in the Shutin Islands. From there, he sailed to Wajio on the Bird's Head Peninsula. On the other hand, in addition to the Lausa expedition from Spain to Moluccas, 1525 to 1526, the Castilians sent an expedition there via the Pacific led by Alvaro de Saavedra Cerón, 1528, prepared by Hernan Cortez in Mexico, in order to compete with the Portuguese in the region. Members of the Garcia Jofre de Lausa expedition were taken prisoner by the Portuguese, who returned the survivors to Europe by the western route. Alvaro de Saavedra Cerón reached the Marshall Islands, and in two failed attempts to return from the Moluccas via the Pacific, explored part of the west and northern New Guinea, also reached the Shutin Islands and sighting Yapin, as well as the Admiralty Islands in the Carolines.
Hey, the chat stopped pulling emergency brake. Apparently, you ran right through something that you should pay attention to.
Okay. Somebody said I can't reach
reference.
the butt crack reference. Do I need to go back to it? Am I good? Oh, Cliff. Okay, I see what you're saying. I thought it was kind of fake. It doesn't even seem they can't figure out where something is with their cartographers, but they can figure. Okay, they got a boy.
Use my butt crack to split the world. What?
Like, how he know so much? How old was this 32-year-old boy that they talking about?
But you hear at this time in 1524, they in the Western Islands in the Pacific.
Yeah. They got a map.
If you made it that far, why would you turn around and come back east? I'm just saying. Ain't the Philippines a little bit further over? And Spain was in the Philippines, along with the French. Seemed like to me somebody talking about two routes that they had.
one true route or one phantom route.
Because if you went east in 1492 and made it, why are you going west now?
Unless you had a specific destination you was trying to reach.
Remember when it started? It started saying that they were going that way, trading spices. The history tried to tell us that's what Christopher Colombo did in 1492. So if you was already setting up spices already, I don't know, it's just weird.
In 1492, that just was the start of the Union, and you hadn't even gained the crown from the Ottomans yet until 1502. So somebody lying.
Exactly. But then again, it could explain why he was an Italian doing it for them. They could have hired him to, so whatever it is he got hired for, he could have been hired before they even had the crown of Spain. Because like we said, we know now that they didn't get that title until 1502.
So if that's the case, then he really wasn't going up under the crown of Spain. What crown was he going up under?
Think about it. If he's coming out of Italy, he close to the actual crown at that time. Because Spain got power because the dude on his deathbed willed it to him. Remember, that was the dude that they said was a fraud on the throne.
Yeah, the last Ottoman Empire. So that was Rome.
Basically, if you look at the location, he would be selling for whoever was in charge of Rome. Because that's all they fighting over anyway. Who has the actual seat?
Why would they be repping Spain when they're actually repping Rome? When Spain didn't come into existence officially until 1502. That's the question. So what are they not saying, or what are they trying to hide?
Bingo.
Joe 47 was asking, were they still in the swarthy stage then? Yeah, they were. They were in the process of moving everything out and switching over, going from swarthy to albino to recessive, total recessive. Because remember, Benjamin Franklin didn't complain about a lot of Germans coming over until what? The 1700s.
Yeah, so that's how you know. Then that's how you know that these people are still swarthy at this time. Not all of them, but the majority of them.
So the transition was in place. The lightning is taking effect.
Well, my question is, could this be when you have family members killing family members to get power? Could this be the start of the hijack? Because isn't that the same system as we'll read later on that the Spanish did when they came to South America, that they killed off the tribal leaders and took their place?
I believe so.
We know that's how they got their seat, by killing off a couple of people and taking it. Well, you can continue, no sellout, if you're able to.
Yep. All right. So on 10 February 1525, Charles V's younger sister, Catherine of Austria, married John III of Portugal, and on 11 March 1526, Charles V married King John's sister, Isabella of Portugal. These crossed weddings strengthened the ties between the two crowns, facilitating an agreement regarding the Moluccas. It was in the interest of the emperor to avoid conflict so that he could focus on his European policy, and the Spaniards did not know then how to get spices from the Moluccas to Europe via the eastern route. The Manila-Acapulco route was only established by Andres de
Caught that?
Stop.
in
Yeah, because they said they didn't know how to get there through via the eastern route. If that was the case, where was Christopher Columbus at this time, and what's the time frame?
Timelines. Want me to read it again? I can read it again. I think I read it again.
Yeah, do me a favor. What's the time reference also too?
We have 1525 and 1526, and
So
then
1525.
1565.
Right. So 1565, they haven't established a trade route in the east yet. So what's
But
up? Who's Christopher Columbus and where is he at? If they haven't gone through the east.
1492 was before. I mean, it was after. It must have been after 1565. I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
the
they.
other 1492.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the alternate universe in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that third hemisphere. Okay. The third hemisphere they split. I got
Gotta be. Because something way out of place here.
you. Hey, what happened?
You don't even know about taking no east route. Hmm. Well, you can continue. That was just interesting that they
David
that
Co-
they saying they didn't know how to go east.
Yeah, David Corey's asking for the jackhammer. So somebody with a ratchet passed him a jackhammer. Even though he got a ratchet, but anyway, never mind. Leave it alone. I'm going to know.
He must have just got off his 15. He don't feel like starting up yet. He's like, somebody hand me that. Just get it. It's right there. But it's beside you. All right. So do I need to read that again, or am I going to the treaty?
Yeah,
You know the treaty.
yeah.
All right. The Treaty of Zaragoza laid down that the eastern border between the two domain zones was 297.5 leagues, or 17 degrees east of Molucca Islands. The treaty included a safeguard clause which stated that the deal would be undone if at any time the emperor wished to revoke it, with the Portuguese being reimbursed the money they had to pay, and each nation, quote, will have the right and the action as that is now, unquote. That never happened, however, because the emperor desperately needed the Portuguese money to finance the War of the League of Cognac against his arch rival Francis I of France.
I wonder what that's about.
I wonder as well. Francis I of France. Am I clicking that? Am I doing that? You doing this?
Yeah, you can click Francis.
Hold on, I lost it. Oh, we're in the treaty. Okay.
Calling
Francis I.
Francis. Calling Francis.
Paging Mr. Francis. Mr. Francis. All right, we got Francis. Francis I was king of France from 1515 until his death in 1547. He was the son of Charles, Count of Angoulême, I don't know, and Louise of Savoy. He succeeded his cousin and father-in-law Louis XII, who died without a son. All right, let's see here. Am I going to? Am I just going to read his bio? Or am I going to read his one of these ancestors? Wait a minute. Mic check.
Yeah, you can go in terrain and ancestors.
Okay. All right. His reign is here we go. As Francis was receiving his education, ideas emerging from the Italian Renaissance were influential in France. Some of his tutors, such as Francois de Moulins de Rochefort, his Latin instructor, who later during the reign of Francis was named Grand Aumônier de France, and Christophe de Longueuil, Brabantian humanist, were attracted by these new ways of thinking and attempted to influence Francis. His academic education had been in arithmetic, geography, grammar, history, reading, spelling, and writing, and he became proficient in Hebrew, Italian, Latin, and Spanish. Francis came to learn chivalry, dancing, and music, and he loved archery, falconry, horseback riding, hunting, jousting, real tennis, and wrestling. I don't know what real tennis is. He ended up reading philosophy and theology, and he was fascinated with art, literature, poetry, and science. His mother, who had a high admiration for Italian Renaissance art, passed this interest on to her son. Although Francis did not receive a humanist education, he was more influenced by humanism than any previous French king. Let's see. Destruction. Military action. No. Man, it's a lot. Bones, did you want me to read that relations with the New World and Asia?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Francis had been much aggrieved at the papal bull, Attorney Regis, in June 1481. Portuguese rule over Africa and the Indies was confirmed by Pope Sixtus IV. 13 years later,
Hold up.
No, I wanted to speed through that. Let me speed through that.
Who ruled over Africa?
Hold up, man. All right. Francis had been much aggrieved that the papal bull Attorney Regis in June 1481, Portuguese rule over Africa and the Indies was confirmed by Pope Sixtus IV. 13 years later, on June 7th, 1494, Portugal and the Crown of Castile signed the Treaty of Tordesillas, under which the newly discovered lands would be divided between the two signatories. All this prompted King Francis to declare, quote, "The sun shines for me as it does for others. I would very much like to see that the clause of Adam's will by which I should be denied my share of the world," unquote. In order to counterbalance the power of the Habsburg Empire under Charles V, especially its control of large parts of the New World through the Crown of Spain, Francis I endeavored to develop contacts with the New World and Asia.
Stop for a second.
No. Man, y'all be having me at these stop signs on this highway now. I'm going highway speeds.
You need to slow down.
I guess.
And go grandma speed.
I ain't seen nobody hailing us.
Get in the right lane.
I ain't seen nobody. He said get in the right lane. I'm in the HOV.
Get in the right lane. Drive on.
We got a high occupancy vehicle right now.
No,
all these folks in the cab.
So, no, because what year is this? Because they're talking about France having a foothold in the New World already. So what year is this?
Let me scroll back. 1481.
So
in June 1481, Portuguese rule over Africa and the Indies was confirmed by Pope Sixtus.
Mm-hmm. Now, then you talk about France having a foothold in the New World already.
13 years later, 1494, Portugal and the Crown of Castile signed a Treaty of Tordesillas.
Keep going.
Under which newly discovered land will be divided into by the two signatories, between the two signatories.
Okay.
So that's 1494, a couple of years after the famous Chris. Not Chris Cross.
Really? Chris Cross episode? Never mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Make you jump. All right. So, in order to... I already said that. All right, I'm going to read it again. In order to counterbalance the power of the Habsburg Empire under Charles V, especially its control of large parts of the New World through the Crown of Spain, Francis I endeavored to develop contacts with the New World and Asia. Fleets were sent to the Americas and the Far East, and close contacts were developed with the Ottoman Empire, permitting the development of French Mediterranean trade as well as the establishment of a strategic military alliance. The port city, now known as Le Havre, was founded in 1517 during the early years of Francis's reign. The construction of a new port was urgently needed in order to replace the ancient harbors of Honfleur and Harfleur, whose utility had decreased due to the silting. Le Havre was originally named Francicopolis after the king who founded it, but this name did not survive until later reigns. I understand why. Sound like he made that up himself, his own name. All right, so
Americas.
Word. In 1524, Francis assisted the citizens of Lyon in financing the expedition of Giovanni da Verrazzano to North America. On this expedition, Verrazano visited the present site of New York City, naming it New Angoulême, and claimed Newfoundland for the French crown.
Hold up. This is 1524.
This is 1524, because that's what it says at the beginning of the sentence. In 1524, Francis assisted the citizens of Lyon in financing the expedition of Giovanni de Verrazano to North America. On this expedition, Verrazano visited the present site of New York City, naming it New Angoulême, and claimed Newfoundland for the French crown. Verrazano's letter to Francis of 8 July 1524 is known as the Celer Codex. In
So
15...
Stop right quick.
No.
You said it like you was hurt.
He said like he irked or something. Like, no, I'm not doing it. You stop. I'm not stopping. You stop.
You got it.
So here's my question. They're talking about all these expeditions and timelines and the individuals that are actually going to these places, but there's no mention, nor have there ever been any mention since about Christopher Columbus. Why is that? Because now they're talking about North America and the New World. So why are there no mentions of Christopher Columbus? Has that struck out to anybody, or is it just me?
It's kind of weird that they can cross-reference a lot of things, but I ain't heard Cristobal's name yet.
Not yet.
Come on, son.
24.
Just like when we be looking for Africans in our history sometimes, and you just don't be finding them. Christopher, where you at? You African?
Maybe he is African.
He might be. I mean, yeah.
You never know.
Man.
Yeah, because in 1524, they setting up Newfoundland, which is now New York.
Come on, son.
Found it.
There it is. It's mine. So again.
Go ahead, man. You good. My bad.
All right. In 1531, Bertrand de Ornesan tried to establish a French trading post at Pernambuco, Brazil. In 1534, Francis sent Jacques Cartier to explore the St. Lawrence River in Quebec to find, quote, certain islands and lands where it is said that there must be great quantities of gold and other riches, unquote. Where you hear that from? Somebody snitching. In 1541, Francis sent Jean-Francois de Roberval to settle Canada and to provide for the spread of the, quote, Holy Catholic faith, unquote. All right, Far East Asia ring. Far East Asia. All right, French trade with East Asia was initiated during the reign of Francis I with the help of ship owner Jean Angot. In July 1527, a French-Norman trading ship from the city of Rouen is recorded by the Portuguese, João, man, I wish they had like phonetic spellings of this stuff, João de Barros, as having arrived in the Indian city of Diu.
Diu?
Diu.
Diu?
Diu.
Don't do that.
What is that? That's three letters in
D-I-U.
D-I-U. Diu.
Don't Diu that.
Don't Diu. Diu. We got to have the Baltimore. Don't Diu. I'm going to go on mute. Don't Diu. Man, I done lost my place. My bad. I done clicked back too many times. Hold up, my bad. Messing with TMH. Okay, don't do it. In 1529, John Parmentier, on board the Saker and the Pince, reached Sumatra. They're making stuff up. Upon its return, the expedition triggered the development of the Dieppe maps, influencing the work of Dieppe cartographers such as Jean Roos. All right, enough of that. Ottoman Empire. Under the reign of Francis I, France became the first country in Europe to establish formal relations with the Ottoman Empire and to set up the instruction in the Arabic language under the guidance of Guillaume Postel and the Collège de France.
Hold up. They did what, man?
I got to read it again. Under the reign of Francis I. I know, right? Is that in your head too, TMH? Every time you hear somebody say that again? It sure is in mine. I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that out loud. Under the reign of Francis I, France became the first country in Europe to establish formal relations with the Ottoman Empire and to set up instruction in the Arabic language under the guidance of Guillaume Postel at the Collège de France. More. In a watershed moment in European diplomacy, Francis came to an understanding with the Ottoman Empire that developed into a Franco-Ottoman alliance.
Stop.
I knew you were going to say that. I was easing on the brakes.
Look, first of all, everybody in the chat are complaining about the sudden stops. Y'all should look. We ain't got. First of all,
we got further than we've ever gotten, people. I'm sorry, but 3 paragraphs in yesterday, I got stopped 72 times, and it's only 71 times today for 7 paragraphs. So it's all right. We're doing fine.
Well, one is because we don't actually have the break sound effects, and because we normally break, then we back up. We go in reverse. So we lose ground every time we stop. So because we're not backing up, we just have you stop. So
it's all right. I'm good.
We never lose ground. We're just not gaining ground as quickly. So
just know y'all not backseat driving when we get on the Autobahn. I'm not doing it. I'm not stopping.
Free put in the chat. Waldo just won't sit down. She said, shaking my head, working those DBAs. These are the same families operating under various titles. That's not hard to see, is it? Not hard to see at all. Everybody doing too much. They're just doing stuff. And you talk about this treaty, but you always hearing about France in the treaty between Portugal and Spain. What's that about? Something to think about. Family ties, and we ain't talking about the TV show. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Think about it. Francis I had a working relationship with the Ottoman Empire.
And speaking of Waldo, where Chris at?
When you talk about the Ottoman Empire, you got to think about. I thought they were supposed to lost all their territories by this time, because we talk about the 1520s and 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did they lose their empire, or did they relinquish some of it on purpose?
Just hand some over to a cousin or uncle.
Hey, can you go turn in this lottery ticket for me?
No, they were marrying each other for power. A lot of times in his marriage, they transferred a lot of their possessions. Land and titles as a gift. You can continue.
What
In a watershed moment in European diplomacy.
That it is. In a watershed moment in European diplomacy, Francis came to an understanding with the Ottoman Empire that developed into a Franco-Ottoman alliance. The alliance has been called, quote, the first non-ideological diplomatic alliance of its kind between a Christian and non-Christian empire, unquote. It did, however, cause quite a scandal in the Christian world and was designated, quote, the impious alliance, unquote, or the, quote, unquote, sacrilegious union of the French lily and the Ottoman crescent. Nevertheless, it endured for many years since it served the objective interest of both parties. The two powers colluded against Charles V, and in 1543, they even combined for a joint naval assault in the siege of Nice. In 1533, Francis I sent Colonel Pierre de Piton as ambassador to Morocco, initiating off official France-Morocco relations. In a letter to Francis I, dated 13 August 1533, the Wattasid ruler of Fez, Amin bin Mohammed, welcomed French overtures and granted freedom of shipping and protection of French traders. Timelines. Are we moving on to bureaucratic reform and language policy?
Yeah.
Are we still? Is this Francis? Oh yeah, this is Francis's rule, right?
Yeah, this is Francis. It's the timelines and the dates that's very important.
And I'm just trying to figure out. Never mind. I'm not. I'm gonna wait. I think you might show up. All right. So bureaucratic reform and language policy. Yeah, there's somewhere. Francis took several steps to eradicate the monopoly of Latin as the language of knowledge. In 1530, he declared French the national language of the kingdom, and that same year opened the Collège des Trois Langues, or College Royal, following the recommendation of humanist Guillaume Boudet. Students at the college could study Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, then Arabic under Guillaume Postel beginning in 1539. In 1539, in his castle in Villers Cotterets, Free should be reading this, Francis signed the important edict known as Ordinance of Villers Cotterets, which among the reforms made French the administrative language of the kingdom as the replacement for Latin. This same edict required priests to register births, marriages, and deaths, and to establish a registry office in every parish. This
Hold on.
initiated the first. Oh, yeah. I want to stop. I hit the brakes already. I was already. My bad.
1539. France.
Somebody.
1539.
Did you? I want to read that again.
Please do.
I'm gonna mess up these names still, so don't worry. In 1539, among other reforms, made French the administrative language of the kingdom as a replacement for Latin. This same edict required priests to register Bible and started to no, it was 1539.
Who to go find your information from?
Statistics. Vital statistics.
I think we should
Mm-hmm. All right, this is an extensive piece of reform legislation signed into law by Francis the First. Oh, let me. Bones, can you drop that link, or do you need me to?
I got you.
All right. All right, so it's an extensive piece of reform legislation signed into law by Francis the First of France on August 10, 1539, in the city of Villers Cotterets. I believe I'm saying that right. Any Frenchies, go ahead and correct me. I'm sorry, French. And the oldest French legislation still used partly by French courts. Largely the work of Chancellor Guillaume Poyet. The legislative edict had 192 articles and dealt with a number of government, judicial, ecclesiastical matters. All right. Registration of births and deaths is one of those. Let me go ahead and I'm just going to go to that one. The ordinance was part of a wider legislation regarding the policing of church benefices to keep vital records registers in the various church local institutions, mainly parishes. The ordinance ordered the creation of at least a register of baptisms needed for determining the age of candidates for ecclesiastical office as a proof of one's death of birth, and a register of burials of churchmen as a proof of one's date of death. Though both registers were kept by religious authorities, they were authenticated by a public notary, always a layman, and were kept in the local royal administration's archives. In fact, as the church kept parish registers since the Middle Ages, the oldest one in France is Giries of 1303. These registers were used to meet the ordinance's dispositions. The national registration was fully laicized in 1792 during the French Revolution by order of the French Republic. These records have continued until the present and are kept at the departmental archives. The civil registration now includes birth, marriage, divorce, and death records.
They said, hold up, these records from 1539
but they
were kept to present day?
Yeah, they got those.
Oh, okay, just checking.
I mean, they still got a register from 1303. that's some years ago.
Christopher.
All right, so do I need to go in any more on that? That was
No. I mean, it let us know what it was. We know officially they've been keeping paper records since 1539,
Oh, they
and
got those.
they still got until present day
They got those.
in the archives.
Man, oh man.
Is it me or is Bones breaking up?
You were breaking up just a second ago. Mic check, everybody. Can we get a mic check?
Mic check, 1 2 1 2.
Get a few sentences from y'all.
Why I gotta be me? Why I gotta be the one breaking up? I'm minding my business.
Yeah, it's got out there. No, that's boy band stuff.
Just doing a rattle off. That's all. Y'all hear me better?
I can hear you. Are you good? No breaking up.
Okay. Oh.
Free says they know who they are and who they're not.
Mm-hmm. You sitting on records for that long?
What's going on, Jaguar? I'm just now seeing the chat. I have not seen the chat in a minute. Muskogee G, Grand Rising, Shiva Primal, peace. Celestial Love, peace.
Oh, Cliff talking about some. They got papers on us.
They got
They
papers.
got papers on papers on papers.
Since 1539 and 1303, don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah.
there anything like racks on racks on racks? No.
Maybe. Possibly.
Mm-hmm. On now. Who don't they know?
Possibly.
Who records they don't got?
Yo, these French. Oh man. Yeah, okay. I think we are good on the breaking up. That's crazy though. All right, so we back at it with the this same edict required priests to register births, marriages, and deaths and to establish a registry office in every parish. This initiated the first records of vital statistics with affiliations available in Europe. All right. Moving on. Religious policies. Divisions in Christianity in Western Europe during Francis's reign created lasting international rifts. Martin Luther's preaching and writing sparked the Protestant Reformation, which spread through much of Europe, including France. Initially, Francis was relatively tolerant of the new movement under the influence of his beloved sister Marguerite de Navarre, who was genuinely attracted by Luther's theology. He even considered it politically useful as it caused many German princes to turn against his enemy, Charles V. In 1533, Francis even dared to suggest to Pope Clement VII that he convene a church council in which Catholic and Protestant rulers would have an equal vote in order to settle their differences, an offer rejected by both the Pope and Charles V. Beginning in 1523, however, Francis burned several heretics at the Place Maubert. Francis's attitude towards Protestantism changed for the worse following the quote affair of the placards unquote on the night of 17 October 1534, in which notices appeared on the streets of Paris and other major cities denouncing the Catholic Mass. The most fervent Catholics were outraged by the notices' allegations. Francis himself came to view the movement as a plot against him and began to persecute its followers. Protestants were jailed and executed. In some areas, whole villages were destroyed. In Paris, after 1540, Francis had heretics such as Etienne Dolet tortured and burned. Whoa. Printing was censored, and leading Protestant reformers such as Calvin were forced into exile. The persecutions soon numbered thousands of dead and tens of thousands of homeless. Persecutions against Protestants were codified in the Edict of Fontainebleau, 1540, issued by Francis. Major acts of violence continued as when Francis ordered the execution of one historical pre-Lutheran groups, the Waldensians, at the massacre of Merindol in 1545.
And we should remember what this is because this is where your Huguenots start showing up, leaving out of France because of this, going down into Southwest Africa, America, England. And
Everybody,
continuing.
everybody.
Yeah, what happened? I just got lost some audio for a second.
Yeah, the same happened here.
Okay.
It says Francis died at Chateau de what's that Rambouillet on the 31st of March 47 on his son and successor's 28th birthday. It is said that he died complaining about the weight of the crown that he had first perceived as a gift from God. He was inferred with his first wife, Claudie, Duchess of Brittany, and Saint Denis Basile. He was succeeded by his son Henry II. St. Francis' tomb and that of his wife and mother, along with the tombs of other French kings and members of the royal family, were desecrated on the 20th of October, 1793, during the Reign of Terror at the height of the French Revolution. Let me pull this other link real quick.
So you were still reading from a treaty, right?
Yeah, we were still off from the treaty.
I noticed that towards the end of the treaty, it had a lot of references and emphasis to France. We're talking about, Spain and Portugal. I just find it interesting that no matter what happens, France is always interwoven in those countries.
Mm-hmm. Give me a second, pulling up the next link.
David, David, you crazy? Did y'all ask Mr. White if we could read from his books? David, this is public information. We don't have to ask nobody for nothing. Whether it's Mr. White, Mr. Left, or Mr. in the middle. I'm just saying. That is all.
I posted the next link up.
That is.
Going into the War of the League of Cognac.
Somebody say cognac?
Cognac.
Is it cognac or cognac? Which one is it?
Is it yak?
Cognac.
I thought it was called yak. I almost spilled my yak on this $200 soup.
It says 1526 to 1530 was fought between the Habsburg dominions of Charles V, primarily the Holy Roman Empire, and the Habsburg Spain, and the League of Cognac, an alliance including the Kingdom of France, Pope Clement VIII, the Republic of Venice, the Kingdom of England, the Duchy of Milan, and the Republic of Florence. It goes in and says, shocked by the defeat of the French in the Italian War of 1521, Pope Clement VIII, together with the Republic of Venice, began to organize an alliance to drive Charles V from Italy. Francis, having signed the Treaty of Madrid, was released from his captivity in Madrid and returned to France, where he quickly announced his intention to assist Clement. Thus, on the 22nd of May, 1526, the League of Cognac was signed by Francis, Clement, Venice, Florence. What's this? So for
Jay, just make it up. That's what I was doing. Wait for somebody to correct you.
Now, one of these letters silent, either the S or
There
the
you go. Because
Just
some
pick,
don't make sense.
just pick
yeah.
one. Just pick one. It don't matter. It's all good. We'll clean up later.
It's like playing horse, yeah.
So we're
Just
gonna
pick
go.
a spot on the floor.
We're gonna go with keeping the S. So Czar Milan of Milan, who desired to throw off the imperial hegemony over them. Henry VIII of England, thwarted in his desire to have the treaty signed in England, refused to join. It says the initial moves. The League quickly seized Lodi, but imperial troops marched into Lombardy and soon forced Sozar to abandon Milan. The Colonna, meanwhile, organized an attack on Rome, defeated the papal forces, and briefly seizing control of the city in September 1526. They were soon paid off and departed, however. It drops down to Rome where it said Charles V now gathered a force of what's this lands connects nectics lands synectics under what's this George Fundersburg and Spanish army under Charles of Bourbon. The two forces combined at Pagzia and advanced on Rome. Francisco, now in command of the papal armies, provide unable to resist them. And when the Duke of Bourbon was killed, his underpaid army sacked the city, forcing the Pope to flee. His escape was made possible by the Swiss Guard's last stands. It's basically dropping down on the information in the years. It drops down to Naples. It says the looting of Rome and the constant removal of Clement from any real role in the war prompt frantic action on the part of the French. On April 30th, 1527, Henry VIII and Francis signed the Treaty of Westminster, pledging.
Boss, quick.
Yes,
I think we need to emphasize the fact that when they talk about the looting of Rome, they're talking about the Ottoman Empire. They're talking about the the dubs, those
yeah,
nobles that are swarthy. Because some people may have a different perspective of Rome at that particular time.
yeah. This is 1527. Yeah, this is when they sacking them.
Like a quarterback.
It says Henry VIII and Francis signed the Treaty of Westminster, pledging to combine their forces against Charles. Francis, having finally drawn Henry VIII into the league, sent the army under Odet de Fox and Pedro Navarro, Count of Alato. So through Geneva, where Andre Dora had quickly joined the French and seized much of Genoese fleet, to Naples, where it proceeded to dig itself in for an extended siege. It says Dora, however, soon deserted the French for Charles. The siege collapsed as plague broke out in the French camp, killing most of the army along with Fox and Navarro. Andre Dora's offense in Genoa where he soon broke the blockade of the city and forced the surrender of the French at Savano. Together with the decisive defeat of the French relief force under Francis de Bourbon, Comet de Saint Paul at the Battle of Landerano, ended France's hopes of regaining its hold on Italy. It says following the defeat of his armies, Francis sought peace with Charles. The negotiations by 1529 in the border city in Cambari. They were conducted
Quick
primarily
question.
between. Mhm.
Quick question. Because you were saying that so France lost their control of Italy. So basically, what they're
Yeah,
saying is at what time France ruled over Italy. So that means those Italians that were being ruled over, they were speaking French at that time, not Spanish.
mm-hmm. Because remember,
Timeline.
exactly. Following the defeat of his armies, Francis sought peace with Charles. Negotiations begin in July 1529 in the border city of Cambari. They were conducted primarily between France's mother, Louise of Savoy for the French, and her sister-in-law, Margaret of Austria, for her nephew, the Emperor, leading to its being known as the Pax des Dames, Peace of the Ladies. Charles himself having sailed from Barcelona to Italy shortly before. The final terms largely mirrored those of the Treaty of Madrid 3 years earlier. Francis surrendered his rights to Artois, Flanders, and Tournai, and was obliged to pay a ransom of 2 million gold ecus before his sons were to be released. Removed, however, were both the humiliating surrender of Burgundy itself, the various points dealing with Charles de Bourbon, who had been killed 2 years prior, was no longer a candidate for leading an independent kingdom of province. The final Treaty of Cambrai, signed on the 5th of August, removed France from the war, leaving Venice, Florence, and the Pope alone against Charles. Charles, having arrived in Genoa, proceeded to Bologna to meet with the Pope. Clement absolved the participants of the sack of Rome and promised to crown Charles. In return, he received Ravenna, Crevia, cities which the Republic of Venice was forced to surrender along with her remaining possessions. Whoa. So basically, the Pope turned around in King Charles, and in return, he got two cities.
Sounds that way. So, but what would the Pope be needing with possessions, or what would he be needing with property? Maybe
See,
that's just me.
backdoor deals to Charles in exchange for being permitted to retain the holding she had won at Marnago. Finally, Francisco was permitted to return to Milan. Charles, having abandoned his earlier plan to place Asildriado de Medici on the throne, in part due to Venetian. No, not no, that's not Venetian. That's Venetian. Venetian objections for the sum of 900,000. What's that? Scudi.
Yeah, I would say either Scuddy or Scooty. More like
It's,
Scuddy.
it drops down. The Republic of Florence alone continued to resist the imperial forces, which were led by the Prince of Orange. A Florentine army under Francisco engaged the armies of the emperor at the Battle of Guanavia in 1530. And although the Prince of Orange himself was killed, the imperial army won a decisive victory, and the Republic of Florence surrendered 10 days later. Alessandro de Medica was then installed as Duke of Florence, so he still got a title. And that was just running through timelines. And this is ending in 1530. Basically, it's showing them how they're taking over positions and titles.
Sounds that way anyway.
Yeah, killing off people, then putting in place who they want in place. Because in this war, it says from 1526 to 1528, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and Duchy of Ferrara fought against the Kingdom of France, Swiss mercenaries, the Papal States, Swiss Guards, Republic of Venice, Republic of Florence, Kingdom of England, Kingdom of Navarre, Republic of Genoa, and Duchy of Milan. Then from the years of 1528 to 1530, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, the Republic of Genoa, Duchy of Ferrara, Duchy of Mantua, fought against the Kingdom of France, Swiss mercenaries, Papal States, Republic of Venice, Republic of Florence, and Duchy of Milan, and the Kingdom of Navarre. And it's kind of
Hold
funny.
on for a second.
Hmm.
Go ahead. You probably gonna say the same thing I'm gonna say. Go ahead, say what you got to say.
During this time where they supposed to be doing all this conquering and moving around, they doing a whole lot of infighting still.
The thing that I was gonna bring up was you talking about 1520, 1525 to 1527. You talking about they're fighting the Republic of Spain. No, it was somebody's republic, Spain, and the Roman Empire, which we still know as that's the Ottoman Empire, are fighting France. But
Hmm.
I thought France and the Ottoman Empire had already had a treaty. So how's that
Hmm.
possible? So what France are they fighting?
Yeah, they say they fight in the Kingdom of France.
So what happened to where they're no longer on each other's side when they had just not too long ago signed the treaty? I think it was about like 10 to 15 years prior to that. Just a thought. And they say the Roman Empire and they don't say the Ottoman Empire as though not to tip you off that they're talking about the same empire. Well, I could be wrong, I guess. But be the first time.
Yeah, the Kingdom of France was a medieval and early modern monarchy in Western Europe. It was among the most powerful states in Europe and in great power since. Key word, it was among the most powerful states in Europe and a great power since the late Middle Ages and the Hundred Years' War. It was also an early colonial power with possessions around the world.
Around the world, Craig. Around the world.
The state's government is 1792. Then the government was in exile from 1792 to 1814. Then they had a new 1814 to 1815. Government in exile at 1815. New government installed 1815 to 1848. And this is the Kingdom of France.
Mm. Can't so you basically really can't at this time you really can't talk about Spain or Portugal without talking about France because everything is centered around France and them fighting over the crown, the Roman Empire or access to the Roman Empire.
Yeah, basically, different family members fighting. Pull this other link, tie it all in real quick.
All right, let me see what the chat's talking about. Oh, battery time. That's great. David Corey says they're all the same people with different titles. That's true. All relatives. It's hard to read the chat because my daggone phone about to croak. Give me a second, y'all.
All right, posted the link in the chat. And this is starting the Italian Wars of 1521 to 1526. And it ties in a lot of what we've been going over already.
So at this time, you talking about the Italian was from 1521. So that means in 1521, the Italians are still under French rule, which means they are not speaking Latin. They are speaking French. So that's something that
Mm-hmm.
people need to be taking into consideration when they're looking at these timelines. Go ahead.
Correct. It says the Italian War of 1521 to 1526, sometimes known as the 4 Years' War, was a part of the Italian Wars. The war pitted Francis I of France and the Republic of Venice against the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, Henry VIII of England, and the Papal States. The conflict arose from animosity over the election of Charles as emperor in 1519 to 1520, and from Pope Leo, but Leo X needed to ally with Charles against Martin Luther.
Martin Luther? The
Yeah,
Martin Luther?
the Martin Luther, not the king, but the Martin Luther.
Okay.
So it's telling you now why they elected him. They elected Charles as emperor because he needed an ally. Because this is when Lutheranism and Protestantism is banging on the Catholic Church at this time. It says the war broke out across Western Europe late in 1521 when a French Navarrese expedition attempted to reconquer Navarre while a French army invaded the Low Countries. A Spanish army drove the Navarrese forces back into the Pyrenees, and other imperial forces attacked northern France, where they were stopped in turn. The Pope, the Emperor, and Henry VIII then signed a formal alliance against France, and hostilities resumed on the Italian peninsula. But with the attention of both Francis and Charles forced on the battleground in northeast France, the conflict in Italy became something of a sideshow. At the Battle of Bacoa on the 27th of April, 1522, Imperial and Papal forces defeated the French, driving them from Lombardy. Following the battle, fighting again spilled onto French soil. While Venice made a separate peace, the English invaded France in 1523, while Charles de Bourbon, alienated by France's attempts to seize his inheritance, betrayed Francis and allied himself with the emperor. It says 1523, while Charles de Bourbon, alienated by Francis, attempts to seize his inheritance, betrayed Francis and allied himself with the emperor. A French attempt to regain Lombardy in 1524 failed and provided Bourbon with an opportunity to invade Provence at the head of a Spanish army.
Hey, a quick question. You remember when we was reading about Turks and Caicos on
Uh-huh.
Friday? Was it Friday or Thursday? And it talked about how I think it was Spain that had conquered that area, and then they pulled out for almost 60 to 70 years. Wasn't that around the
Mhm.
same time of that war?
It's lining up. They go to timelines again.
Because it was like they had just left. Because my question was, why all of a sudden you just gonna leave and then attempt to come back? I think that war had something to do with it. They either needed those ships, or they couldn't afford to keep sending stuff out there to them, so they had to come back. Just something to think about.
And you also hear again on the one part where it tells you alienated by France's attempts to seize his inheritance, that Charles de Bourbon betrayed Francis and allied himself with the emperor. See, still again, they're fighting over position. To who gonna be in charge of what? Who's the real ruler of what? It goes on to say Francis himself led a second attack on Milan in 1525. His disastrous defeat at the Battle of Pavia, where he was captured and many of his chief nobles were killed, led to the end of the war, with Francis imprisoned in Spain. A series of diplomatic maneuvers centered on his release ensued, including a special French mission sent by Francis' mother, Louise of Savoy, to the court of Suleiman the Magnificent. That would result in an Ottoman ultimatum to Charles, an unprecedented alignment between Christian and Muslim monarchs that would cause a scandal in the Christian world and lay the foundation for the Franco-Ottoman alliance. Suleiman used the opportunity to invade Hungary in the summer of 1526. Hold on. Remember what you was talking about, TMH, about the France and the Ottoman alliance? It's starting right here. Because this is the part where Francis is kidnapped and his mother says to the court of Suleiman the Magnificent, and that will result in the Ottoman ultimatum to Charles, an unprecedented alignment between Christian and Muslim monarchs that would cause a scandal in the Christian world and lay the foundation for the Franco-Ottoman alliance. Suleiman used the opportunity to invade Hungary in the summer of 1526, defeating Charles' allies at the Battle of Moluccas. But despite these efforts, Francis would sign the Treaty of Madrid, surrendering his claims to Italy, Flanders, and the Burgundy. Only a few weeks after his release, however, he repudiated the terms of the treaty, starting the War of the League of Cognac. Although the Italian wars would continue for another 3 decades, they would end with France having failed to regain any substantial territories in Italy.
So they lost Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So Italy become independent then, or were they under Spanish rule?
Most likely Spanish rule, because that's who they was fighting against. Because Charles V was sitting in Spain at the time. But 1526 is the start of the Franco-Ottoman alliance. So at this time, this is when France and the Ottoman Empire aligned themselves. It says by 1518, it's going back, it says prelude. By 1518, you was going to say something? All right, it says by 1518, the peace that had prevailed in Europe after the Battle of Maranago was beginning to crumble. The major powers, France, England, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire, were outward friendly, pleading by the Treaty of London to come to the aid of any of the signatories that was attacked and to combine against any nation that broke the peace. They were divided, however, on the question of the imperial successions. The Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I, intending for Habsburg to succeed him, began to campaign on behalf of Charles of Spain, while Francis put himself forward as an alternative candidate. At the same time, the papacy and the Holy Roman Emperor were forced to deal with the rising influence of Martin Luther, who found support among some imperial nobles, while Francis was faced with the Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, who interposed himself into the quarrels of the continent in an attempt to increase both England's influence and his own. It states Maximilian's death in 1519 brought the imperial election to the forefront of European politics. Pope Leo X, threatened by the presence of Spanish troops and mere 40 miles from the Vatican, supported the French candidacy. The prince electors themselves, with the exception of Frederick of Saxon, who refused to countenance the campaigning, promised their support at once. Before his death, Maximilian had already promised sums of 500,000 florins to the electors in exchange for their votes, but Francis offered up to 3 million, and Charles retaliated by borrowing vast sums from the fugitives. The final outcome, however, was not determined by the exuberant bribes, which included Leo promising to make the Archbishop of Mainz his permanent legate. The general outrage of the populace at the idea of a French emperor gave the electors pause. And when Charles put an army in the field near Frankfurt, where they were meeting, the electors obligatory vote. Oh, excuse me. The electors obligatory voted for him. Well, wouldn't you think he was
Man,
crowned Holy Roman Emperor on the 23rd of October 1520?
he bought that
The
crown.
electors obligingly voted for him. Well, it ain't too much of a choice if you got an army sitting in the field right where the people voting. So they said they crowned him Holy Roman Emperor on the 23rd of October 1520, by which point he already controlled both the Spanish crown and hereditary Burgundy Islands and the lower coast.
Mm. So
It's a
gives
mm-hmm.
gives a whole new meaning to a rigged election. You have the military sitting at the election booth, like, what y'all gonna do? Who y'all voting for again? Oh, okay.
It says Cardinal Wolsey, hoping to increase Henry VIII's influence on the continent, offered the services of England as a mediator for the various disputes between Francis and Charles. Henry and Francis staged an extravagant meeting at the Field of Cloth of Gold. Immediately afterwards, Wolsey entertained Charles in Calais. Following the meetings, Wolsey, concerned mainly with improving his own stature in preparation for the next papal conclave, proceeded to stage a hollow arbitration conference at the Calais, which lasted until April 1522 to no practical effect. Well, he ain't even trying to help. He was trying to get his own self straight. It says in December, the French began to plan for war. Francis did not wish to openly attack Charles because Henry had announced his intentions to intervene against the first party to break the 10-year peace. Oh, give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. Rigged elections, bribery, all the makings for a situation comedy, or drama, or murder mystery, or all three.
Like the start of a hijack.
I know, right? Never ceases to amaze me.
All right. Let the part say in December, the French began to plan for war. Francis did not wish to openly attack Charles because Henry had announced his intentions to intervene against the first party to break the 10-year peace instead. He turned to more covert support for incursions in German and Spanish territory. One attack would be made on the Moluccas River under the leadership of Robert de la Marck. Simultaneously, a French Navarrese army would advance through Navarre after reconquering Saint-Jean Petit Depot. The expedition was normally led by the 18-year-old Navarrese king Henry de Albert, whose kingdom had been invaded by Fernando II of Aragon in 1512. Yeah, Fernando II of Aragon, that's the land of what you would call Spain. But the army was effectively commanded by Andre de Fox and funded and equipped by the French. The French design quickly proved flawed as the intervention of Henry of Nassau drove back the Meuse offensive. And although de Fox was initially successful in seizing Pampelon, he was driven from Navarre after being defeated at the Battle of on June 1521. Charles was meanwhile preoccupied with the issue of Martin Luther, whom he confronted at the Diet of Worms. In March 1521, the emperor viewed Catholicism as a natural way of binding the diverse principalities of the Holy Roman Empire to him. Since Pope Leo X, for his part, was willing to tolerate such open defiance of his own authority, he and the emperor were forced to support one another against Luther, who was now backed by Frederick of Saxony and Franz von Sickingen on the 25th of May, 1521. Charles and Cardinal Gamaro Eladinro, the papal Nuco proclaimed the Edict of Worms against the Luther. Simultaneously, the emperor promised the Pope the restoration of Parma and Pacasenzia to the Medici and of Milan.
Gesundheit.
Leo needing the imperial mandate for his campaign against what he viewed as a dangerous heresy, promised to assist in expelling the French from Lombardy, leaving Francis with only the Republic of Venice for an ally. It says initial moves. I'm just going back over the part we already did. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I think no salad left you with all the hard words to say. He did it on purpose.
No problem.
Yeah, why was I about to say, Bones? Whenever you want me to mess some words up, let me know. In a few minutes.
No problem.
I'll be ready.
Not right now. You got a quota. You got 10 more words to mess up.
All right, down to the part where it says Madrid. It says after Pavia, the fate of the French king and of France itself became the subject of furious diplomatic maneuvering. Charles V, lacking funds to pay for the war, decided to forego the marriage into the House of Tudor, which he had promised Henry VIII, and sought instead to marry Isabella of Portugal, who would bring with her a more substantial dowry. Bourbon meanwhile plotted with Henry to invade and partition France, and at the same time encouraged the Avalos to seize Naples and declare himself king of Italy. Here they go. Backstabbing on backstabbing on backstabbing.
Hey, but we might find out Waldo. Where Waldo at, though?
You know, it says Louise of Savoy, who had remained as regent in France during her son's absence. Yeah, this is King Francis the First mother. In France during her son's absence. This at the time they kidnapped him and got him in Spain as a prisoner. Attempted to gather troops and funds to defend against an expected invasion of Artois by English troops. She also sent a first French mission to Suleiman the Magnificent, requesting assistance, but the mission was lost on its way to Bosnia. In December 1525, a second mission was sent, led by John Frigpenny, which managed to reach Constantinople, the Ottoman capital, with secret letters asking for the deliverance of King Francis I and an attack on the Habsburg. Frigpenny returned with an answer from Suleiman. On the 6th of February 1526, initiating the first steps of the French-Ottoman alliance, Suleiman eventually wrote an ultimatum to Charles, asking for the immediate release of Francis and demanding a yearly tax from the Holy Roman Empire.
A yearly tax? Good grief.
Suleiman eventually wrote an ultimatum to Charles, asking for the immediate release of Francis and demanding a yearly tax from the Holy Roman Empire. When this was not forthcoming, the Ottomans launched an invasion of Hungary in the summer of 1526, aiming to reach Venice.
Attack! Oh, sorry.
Oh, you ain't gonna pay? All right. Say Francis, convinced that he would regain his freedom, if he could obtain a personal audience with Charles, Pres Diavalos, and Lenore, who had intended to transport the king to the Castel Nuovo in Naples, to send him to Spain instead. Concerned by Bourbon's scheming, they agreed, and Francis arrived in Barcelona on the 12th of June. Francis was initially held in a villa in Bassano near Valencia, but Charles urged to negotiate a settlement by Montmorency, and Lannoy, who suggested that the Italians would soon prove unfaithful to their imperial alliance, ordered the king brought to Madrid and imprisoned in the citadel there. However, Charles adamantly refused to receive Francis personally until the latter had accepted an agreement. Meanwhile, Henry II of Navarre, who had fought alongside Francis at Pavia and who had been imprisoned in Madrid as well, escaped. The struggle for Navarre continued, with Charles occupying the southern fringes of the Lower Navarre and Henry remaining at large. It says Charles demanded not only the surrender of Lombardy, but also of Burgundy and the province of forcing Francis to argue that French law prevented him from surrendering any lands possessed by the crown without the approval of Parliament, which would not be forthcoming. Okay, so this at the part where he got Francis in prison and telling him that he's not gonna let him go unless he sign over these three lands. It goes on to state, in September, Francis fell gravely ill, and his sister, Marguerite de Navarre, rode from Paris to join him in Spain. The imperial doctors examined the king, believed that his illness was caused by his sorrow at not being received by the emperor, and urged Charles to visit him. Against the advice of his Grand Chancellor, Merciano Gattinari, who argued that seeing Francis on his deathbed was an action motivated by mercenary concerns rather than by compassion, and was thus unworthy of the emperor. Charles consented, and Francis soon made a complete recovery. An attempt to escape, however, proved fruitless, and succeeded only in getting Marguerite sent back to France. It says by the beginning of 1526, Charles was faced with demands from Venice and the Pope to restore Francisco II to the throne of the Duchy of Milan, and had become anxious to achieve a settlement with the French before another war began. Francis, having argued to retain Burgundy without result, was prepared to surrender it to achieve his own release. On January 14, 1526, Charles and Francis agreed to the Treaty of Madrid, by which the French king renounced all his claims in Italy, Flanders, and Artois, surrendered Burgundy to Charles, agreed to send two of his sons to be hostages at the Spanish court, and promised to marry Charles's sister Eleanor to restore to the Bourbon the territories that had been seized from him.
Hold up. Yo, he gonna send two of his sons to be hostages and then marry somebody he didn't want to be married to?
It says the Treaty of Madrid, by which the French king renounced all his claims in Italy, Flanders, Artois, surrendered Burgundy to Charles, agreed to send not one, but two of his sons to be hostages at the Spanish court, and promised to marry Charles's sister Eleanor and to restore to Bourbon the territories from him. You know, when they talk about the Bourbon, they all talking about the House of Bourbon or Bourbon.
Yeah, not the bourbon you put in your glass.
Hand on my lightweight.
Woo woo. It says Francis, who held the title of most Christian king, also they go again, jacking for seats. It says Francis was released on the 6th of March and escorted by Lenore, journeyed north to Futenaraba. On the 18th of March, he crossed the Bedosa north into France, while at the same time, the Dauphin and his brother, who had been brought to Bayonne by Louis and Lautrec, crossed into Spain and into captivity. Okay, that's the name of the two sons that he gave up to be hostages.
Hold on.
That's
But here's a quick question: How would you feel? How would you feel if your daddy made you hostage? I'm just saying.
like, look at here. I'm coming home, man. Yeah, everything gonna be all right. I'm coming home. But what I'm gonna need for you and your brother to do, I'm gonna need y'all like to go over here and just hang out for a little bit.
Yeah,
Just like,
there's gonna
That
be a
ain't my
chair.
daddy. That's your daddy.
There's gonna be a chair coming to pick you up. I'm gonna need y'all to get in there. Get in there. Don't ask no questions. Just get on in. I'm just saying.
it says they're in Spain into captivity. By this time, Francis had attained peace with England by the Treaty of Hampton Court, drafted by Thomas Wolsey and the French ambassador at the Hampton Court Palace. The treaty was signed in 1526 and was ratified by the French delegation in April 1527 at Greenwich. Francis, however, had no intentions on complying with the remaining provisions of the Treaty of Madrid. I repeat, Francis, however, had no intentions on complying with the remaining provisions of the Treaty of Madrid. That's
But the,
stuck. But send your two sons out now,
I
reneging.
know that's what I'm saying. So what you gonna do about your two sons that's already held hostage? You just gonna let them? They just gonna get it. They just gonna catch it. They just taking the L. They taking one for the team.
I
To
guess it's like
what?
it is what it is.
To
Wow.
what?
It says on the 22nd of March, with the Pope's blessing, he proclaimed that he would not be bound by the Treaty of Madrid because it had been signed under duress. Clement VIII, who had meanwhile become convinced that the emperor's growing power was a threat to his own position in Italy, sent envoys to Francis and Henry VIII, suggesting an alliance against Charles. This is the start where England and the church is turning against the king, the other king, or the king of Spain at this moment. Because this is where the king of Spain trying to seize and take everybody's seat.
Give me that. What you got on my seat?
It goes on to say, Henry, having received nothing from the Treaty of Madrid, was receptive to the offers. Yeah, because he got bucked in the deal. In May, Francis and the Pope launched the War of the League of Cognac, in an attempt to reclaim the territory that French had lost. Henry rebuffed his attempts to have the alliance signed in England and would not join until. Yeah, that's the part we went over where it says the war would prove unsuccessful, but Francis and his successor, Henry II, would continue to assert their claims to Milan to the remainder of the Italian wars, only relinquishing them after the peace of Cateau Cambrise in 1559.
Come on, man. That's just. I can't do it. It ain't even safe to be a role in the family. You mess around, get kidnapped, or get swapped out, or you have to worry about your younger brother killing you to take the throne. Nah, I'm good.
Making deals on top of deals on top of listen.
Don't make
So
no
this is
sense.
the thing. This is the question with the Ottomans and them being in alliance with France. Could they play the saboteur hand? Because think about it, the Ottomans did fight against the Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Aren't those Ottomans those Moors that people be talking about that civilized Spain? I'm just saying.
Yep,
And aren't those Ottomans Turks? I'm just saying.
yep, Iberians. Yep,
Iberians and Issa mix, maybe. I don't know. It's possible.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm. Just a prelude. Just a prelude. Something about something about.
Posting the next link. Give me 1 second. Alrighty. Reading on the House of Habsburg. Clicked on this because I don't know if y'all noticed, we've been hearing about them a whole lot.
Them who?
The House of Habsburg.
The House of Hamburgers. What?
All right. It says the House of Habsburg, German, also spelled Habsburg in English, and alternatively called the House of Astoria, ostracized in German, was one of the most influential and distinguished royal houses of Europe. The throne of the Holy Roman Empire was continuously occupied by the Habsburgs from 1438 until their extinction in the male line. Yeah, we went over that part on them. It was something. Hold on. Here we go. It says the house takes its name from the Habsburg Castle, a fortress built in 2010 in present-day Switzerland, in the canton of Argua, by Count Radbu of Ketagu, who named his fortress Habsburg. His grandson Otto II was the first to take the fortress name as his own, adding Count of Habsburg to his title. The House of Habsburg gathered dynastic momentum through the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. In 1273, Count Rabat's seventh generation descendant, Rudolph of Habsburg, became Roman German king. It says in 1273, Count Rabat's seventh generation descendant, Rudolph of Habsburg, became the Roman German king. He moved the family power's base to the Duchy of Austria, in which the Habsburgs ruled until 1918. It
So
goes on.
wait a minute. Hold on. He the Roman and the German king. So he's controlling over two provinces.
It says Roman German king.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the Roman German king, East Francia, and the Kingdom of Germany, from the division of the Frankish Empire in 1843 into the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. Check this out. The title used by the early rulers was Rex Francorum, Orientum, King of East Franks, or Rex Francorum, King of Franks. During the later medieval period, 11th to 12th century, the title was King of Romans, and sometime interchangeable King of Germans.
To what?
I'm going to read it again. 11th to the 15th centuries, the title was King of Romans, Rex Romanorum, and sometimes interchangeable to King of Germans. From 1508 until 1806, King of Romans continued to be used by the emperor, while Rex Germania, King of Germany, or Rex in Germania, King of German, was used by the emperor's heir apparent. Just a little information on what that title means.
What you talking about, Willis?
Even the Romans go back to these Franks. God, hey. They say he moved the family powers. Okay. A series of dynastic marriages enabled the family to vastly expand its domains to include Burgundy, Spain, and its colonial empire, Bohemia, Hungary, and other territories in the 16th century. And the family separated into the senior Spanish and the junior Austrian branches, who settled their mutual claims in the ornate treaty. It says the House of Habsburg became extinct in the male line in the 18th century. The senior Spanish branch ended upon the death of Charles II of Spain in 1700 and was replaced by the House of Bourbon. The remaining Austrian branch became extinct in the male line in 1740 with the death of the Holy Roman Empire, Charles VI. It was succeeded by the descendants of his eldest daughter, Maria Theresa, married to Francis III, Duke of Lorraine. The successor house styled itself formally as the House of Habsburg-Lorraine, German Habsburg-Lorraine, because it was often still referred to as the House of Habsburg. Historians use appellations of Habsburg monarchy for the countries in Providence that were ruled by the family until 1918. The House of Habsburg-Lorraine continued to exist till this day, and its members use the Habsburg name, for example, Karl von Habsburg. It says the Habsburg Empire had the advantage of size, but multiple disadvantages. They were rivals on four sides. Its finances were unstable. The population was fragmented into multiple ethnicities, and its industrial base was thin. Its naval resources were so minimal that it did not attempt to build an overseas empire. It did not have the advantage of good diplomats, typified by Prince Metternich, that had a grand strategy for survival that kept the empire going despite wars with the Ottomans, Frederick the Great, Napoleon, and Bismarck, until the final disaster of the First World War, along with the Capitan dynasty. It was one of the two most powerful continental European royal families, dominant in European politics for nearly 5 centuries. Any thoughts?
Hmm.
Man, listen,
Peace, Copper. What's going on, Copper?
they just need to stop it. What's up, Copper?
Peace,
Hey,
peace.
brother. Peace, y'all. Grand Rising.
Grand Rising, man. You been listening? You getting to peep at this French and Spanish and Italian and Ottoman, aka the Turks, and English mess. All these cousins and brothers fighting over one throne, selling each other out, marrying cousins, putting putting nephews and sons into hostage situations. Did they ever get those? Did they ever get those boys out? Just wondering. They just go. Was this a cliffhanger? They didn't tell us. They didn't tell us. Never mind. I'm done.
Isn't this all the same stuff they claimed that savages were doing? That they put on to project it onto us?
Yeah, basically.
Making making bad decisions and throwing those bad decisions on the other people, like you said, taking hostages, fighting for stuff. This is all the stuff they attribute to us, and this is what they were doing.
Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got to say about that.
I mean, it's just crazy, though. For even when you check the timelines, when you check in history, where you have gaps in the colonization of Americas, it's kind of funny them gaps in colonization are happening at the same time they're fighting over who's in charge over there.
Yep, and we still ain't heard a peep from your boy Christopher Columbus or Cristobal Colon
Oh,
or
you ain't found Waldo yet?
Crisco. Anybody heard about Crisco?
Crisco.
Anybody heard from Crisco? No, no.
I like that. I like that.
Nope, still no answer.
Lord.
1492, he sailed the ocean blue, but Spain wasn't even Spain. False or
Jeez,
true?
Hey,
What would you were
hey,
saying, Carl?
I think y'all might be on something. No sellout just said Crisco, right? But what's
Uh,
the,
what's his
I'm
name?
sorry,
TMH. Yeah.
TMH.
Don't pull a TMH.
Well, you TMH are talking about Crisco. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, I
Clarification.
just said
My
lard.
apologies. Okay, so lard, Old English, lard, layered, lord, lord master. Okay, so think about what they're really telling you that these lords are. These people these landlords, these people that own land and are lording over it. What are they really pointing to? That word Crisco comes from Christos, the anointing, the person anointed with oil. All of this stuff all means something. This is how you end up having these god kings that can't do any wrong. They do all sorts of unspeakable things. You see how this conversation just went full circle? They do all sorts of unspeakable things, but it's all right because they're lords. They're holier than thou, which allows them and justifies them to do what they do.
Whereas if they were commoners, regular folk, it would not be permissible.
Precisely. And to this day, there's a separate set of rules that governs them than what governs us.
Interesting.
Like Lady Free would say, all of this happens serendipitously, and she's right. All of these phrases come up for a good reason, because they actually do mean something to the discourse of what we're learning and what we're trying to understand.
Interesting. To say the very least. I don't think Christopher Columbus was real. Or Christopher Columbus is more like a concept than an actual person. But I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
And that's what we have to look at, because again, as Lady Free would say, what's in the name? You have a name or a title because it means something. And it not only means a specific thing, but it also gives the named individual or the named title purpose. And when you look at what the purpose of the title of Cristobal Colon or Cristoforo Colombo or Christopher Columbus, whichever way you want to do it, and notice how it always has a different name for each of the different languages, because it means something. It's a title. And we confuse that with individuals' names, because you get a name like Roy or Reginald. But what do those names mean? They both mean king. They're
Right,
a
because
title.
Spain had viceroys.
Right. Okay. So what is Re? Re is Ra, Saturn, Cronus. Re is a father, the father of gods, Titan. Look at when you look at, or dare I say, Juggernaut. When you look at what these names mean and what they're attributed to. I took some pictures when I was in London. at Buckingham Palace. And across from Buckingham Palace is a courtyard, or right in front of the entryway. There's a big fountain, and there's a statue of Queen Victoria. And the word Regina is used often with her name. See, we look at that word and anglicize it to say Regina, like the name Regina. But Ina, if you look at it, the way it's spoken, the way that spelling is spoken in Spanish is Reina or Regina. Okay, Reina is Rey, a female version of Rey or Ra, ruler, Titan, Juggernaut. So that's where you get to a deeper meaning in these words once you understand what these words are and where they come from.
And it's kind of funny that in the chat they mentioned Game of Thrones, but exactly that's what's going on. Fighting and making deals for different seats and positions.
And Muskogee G put in the chat that Christopher Columbus equals cross-bearing colony.
Mm.
Right? So when we look at Columbus, Colombia, what are we talking about? Maybe it has something to do, in part at least, with that same dove. Remember when we were talking about the Huguenots and the Huguenot cross and how it has a downward facing fallen dove underneath it? Columbus, the sacrificial dove. Anybody ever wonder why the Columbus and the Challenger both exploded space shuttles in the 80s? There's a phrase. There's a phrase with every shuttle's name on it, and the two that met their demise in the phrase that has all of those names. I'll not get into that now because that's not extremely on topic. But Columbia, the District of Columbia. What is that supposed to mean? It means that that doesn't say nation's capital. That means something else. What does this all really mean? And if I had to venture to guess, I would say maybe somebody had to sacrifice or give up what they had, i.e. land, maybe culture, a few other things, so that the people that came here could benefit from it. Isn't that what they do to you now? Isn't that what they do to the so-called African American? You see it in movies. You see it in television. You got to go away. You got to die. You have to give up something so everybody else can have it.
So basically, if you took look at it from that perspective, and we're just looking at titles, Christopher Columbus is nothing more than a representative of a colonizer who's come bearing a cross.
Right. And so let us look at that. Let us look at the symbolism, because we also covered these brotherhoods. We also covered the Ku Klux Klan. What were they doing when they went to visit people around midnight or so? They would burn crosses in their yards the same way when the Spanish came and the Portuguese came. Here, they would burn a cross at night. They would stick the cross in the ground and claim it for their nation or their monarchy. And at night, so that the Indians could still see it, they would burn it. What's old is new. And nothing really ever changes.
Nope. Where do your districts come from? Even the term district.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it a term of this same German Roman Empire, Roman districts?
I know Shiva Prama put Christo's house is in Genoa, Italy.
Yep. And see, they attribute the voyages of Christopher Columbus to the Spanish, yet somehow there's a whole lot of Italian
Yeah, he's Italian.
influence. Right. And that's the point. He's Italian, but when you look at the man's uh, alleged religious beliefs, you start seeing Judaism. We got a whole lot going on here. This one figure represents a whole lot of different people. And remember, a lot of what Christopher Columbus represents the same thing that the Huguenots represent, or the
Mm-hmm.
Merovingians, I should say. So you're talking about French Zionism. This isn't to demonize anybody. This is just to start putting these things together. So a lot of different interests are being represented here. Even though a lot of this is done in the name of Protestantism, whole there were other people who weren't necessarily Christians that had an interest in what was going on.
But like I've always said, a Protestant is nothing more than an individual who protests or is protesting Catholicism. So you could be any religious belief or no religious belief and still protest the Catholic Church and still be claimed a Protestant. So I mean that basically
Exactly.
supports your point.
Yep.
Which is probably the reason why France didn't have a problem with uniting with the Ottoman Empire, who were Muslims, because they were both fighting the Catholic Church in Spain, as they were trying to come to power.
Right. And as they would say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, at least for now. And you look at how they operate in practice. So when the French come to the Americas, they have a pretty widespread, adamant policy of amalgamation. Let's get everybody together, mix it all up. Let's make gumbo out of the food and the people, out of the resources, out of the land. Let's amalgamate it all, mix it all up. Then we become this amorphous creature that can't be stopped. This Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, I'll say.
Oh, but then look at Frankenstein. So you're talking about what? French and Stein. French and
And what is a Stein in German? Stone. The earth, the land.
Elder Free says the name Merovingian just so happened to end up in the movie The Matrix. Go figure. Not by coincidence.
Right. And this was a conversation I should have had by now, but that was that I'll get to and probably expand on it at some point. But what was the purpose of the Merovingian? The Merovingian took everybody that didn't belong to some other group and put them all together. They were called the exiles. They were all the machine programs that didn't have a purpose anymore. We're talking about purpose, right? They didn't have a purpose anymore. And instead of going back to the source to be deleted, he held on to them and turned all of these different kinds of programs into one amorphous group that served essentially to benefit the Merovingian. The Matrix is deliberate in everything it shows you. And when it shows you these exile programs, oh, and what are these? What forms do these programs take? They become ghosts, vampires like Persephone. They become werewolves like some of the henchmen. So now you see where a lot of these ideas and these tropes are coming from these brotherhoods, and they're talking about werewolves and ghosts, vampires, the Frenchman, the Huguenot. The exiles, the people that were cast out. Look at what they're showing you.
Basically, the creation of the new man or citizen, whatever you want to title them.
Exactly. That's exactly it, Bones. And as a matter of fact, you go and you look on your money. What does it tell you? Novus Ordo Seclorum, the new
Out of
secular order. So now, and that's another part of it, TMH. Et pluribus unum. Out of many, we are all one. Out of many united, literally, but out of many come one. The amalgamation that becomes the new order for the world.
or as Free has said, out of one came many.
Because
If
let's look at it.
if you
Oh, go ahead.
no, if you read it indigenously,
Mm-hmm.
out of one came many, which is basically how we got all these different um, types of people, if you will.
Right. And this is the regression of what happened at first back into itself. So from this original group, you have the seeding of all the races of all the people of the earth, and you have them all come right back to where they started.
Just think about it. If I have desire to rule, and me and my people get together, and we be like, okay, we're gonna rule. The best way to do that is start replacing people and creating new people. It would seem why the French were so keen in moving people in particular populations and areas. Because after people stay around for a couple of years, you have new distinct populations. So the old ways, you basically breed the old ways out. When you get into combining the cultures, to combining the different languages, different habits.
My bag. I'm sitting here thinking I'm off mute, and I'm on mute.
No, but was pulling up the link that Carter put in the chat.
Yeah, I was reading it. I looked at it. I was like, let me go ahead and read this, and then I was like, wait a minute. Nah, I can't
I think
find
this will shed some light.
Very interesting. Yeah, he posted the etymology of the word district. You was gonna read it again?
I was, if I could find it. I lost them on my phone. Hold on. I got it. I'll go ahead and read it. Can you hear me? Mic check. Mic check.
1, 2.
All right. Etymology of district. 16s, 610s. Territory under the jurisdiction of a lord or officer. From French district. 16 16 circa. From medieval Latin, districtus, restraining of offenders, jurisdiction. Then under the feudal system, area of jurisdiction, district within which the lord may take and withhold personal property, distrain, for legal reasons. It is a noun use. It is a noun use of the past participle of Latin distringere, to draw apart, hinder. Also in medieval Latin, compel, coerce, from dis, apart, see dis. Stringere, draw tight, press together, see strain. Compare distress, which originally in English also had a sense of constrain or compel. District was used generally of the limited extent of country marked off for a special purpose by the 1660s, vaguely of any tract of land by 1712. In the US, it generally indicates that the inhabitants act together for some specific purpose, school district, etc. District attorney is attested by 1789 American English.
Et pluribus unum. So does that give what we've been discussing this morning a little bit more context?
Mm-hmm.
Lady Free says, a lot of what we do now was unfathomable to us as children, but TV and amalgamated culture has people acting like a copy of a copy of a copy of an idol. Remember, your ancestors and the honor code. Okay, what happens when you have a copy of a copy of a copy? It corrupts. It's like a Xerox machine. Once you copy something and you copy that copy that's not the original, you have what's called, in philosophical terms, a simulacra. This actually ties into the Matrix quite a bit. If you look at the original Matrix film, Neo, in the beginning of the movie, gets a disc for the guy that's at the door, out of a book, a hollowed out book, and that book is called Simulacra and Simulation. I suggest anybody in the viewing or listening audience that can get their hands on a copy probably should and take a look at it. They made everybody that was on the production of the first film read that book to understand what the Matrix really is. Now, simulacra is a copy of a copy that has, at that point, been so far removed from the real thing that was copied originally that it bears no resemblance to it. It's only a simulation of another simulation, twice removed, at least. Simulation is the I guess if you want to call it, the emulation of reality. So if you have something real, you make something that's like it. It's not it, but it's kind of acting like it.
Ish or
simulation.
Ish or ick.
Ish. Right? So if you tried to simulate reality with things that are no longer grounded in reality, you have the simulacra of simulation. I'm sorry, the simulation of simulacra, they call it. Now with that, you have a place that you live in, that you go to work, you go to church, you pay your taxes, you do all of these things. That's not real. That's a fabrication. This is a fabrication. Because legally, the use of Latin, okay, via lecto difficilior, is how we've all been essentially talked into doing things we wouldn't normally do and having them be justified because, well, they're legal. You ever notice how criminals can do horrible things and get away with it because what they did was legal? Even though it's horrible stuff and people think that it should be a crime, but it's legal, so they get away with it.
Simple.
Yeah, you can't.
Y'all was saying simple because the trick to making this simulation that we all live in, instead of living the actual life that our ancestors, is the parameters that the simulation are bound on. And what I mean by parameters, the rules of the simulation. As long as you know the rules on what it's designed by, you move through it no problem. Because it's just like how you stated, a criminal will do something and get off. How? Because they knew the rules. They knew the limits and how to maneuver with it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing here. They'll tell you in America, be all you can be, do this, do that. But the part a lot of people don't realize, it's placed inside of a box. Be all you can be by following this, by following that, by dictating what images they show you, what sounds they allow you to hear. But maybe it's time to start going outside of the box. Because like we said yesterday, how good is a test and you're asking me questions on a test, but you already got the answers picked out for me? It's a controlled simulation.
Got multiple choice. You got multiple choices.
But if the answer is already chosen for me in a multiple choice, in order for me to make it to the next point, you already know what I'm gonna choose before I choose it, before I even take the test.
So at the end of the day, what's the point? If you think about it, what's the point of all this? What's the point of sharing this information? What's the point of providing this information, even exposing people to it? What was the point of today? What am I asking?
It's showing people in real time that in order to find a lot more of our story, our history, that a lot of times we have to learn the rules to how all this is put together. Because once you know how it's put together and how it's ran, then how you can maneuver in the system to benefit you and your people, you have a better understanding of it. Instead of doing particular things in the system to where you might have the right intentions, but not knowing how the system works and how it moves, get you jammed up in the end. It's showing you that when it comes to these records, like we've been saying, if you look in one place and it's not there, maybe you have to look towards another nation's archives, because there's multiple hands in these stories.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up, teammates, because there's a chapter in Simulacra and Simulation that asks the same question. When Neil opens that book, he opens it and it's not in place, but they want you to see the chapter 2. Everything's done deliberately. It's in the end of the book, but when he opens it up, it's like in the middle. But the chapter is on nihilism, Nihilism. And in that chapter, the author of the book, Jean Baudrillard, Frenchman, philosopher, says, essentially, what's the point in all of this? Now that we know that the world we've been living in and been inhabiting and going about our day inside of means nothing. So what's the point? If we know there's no way we can break out of the simulation, if we know that there's no real that we can cling to, there's this gulf between the simulation of what we've been told that we are, and our real selves, our real culture, our real language. If there's this gulf between this, if we can say we're this and that all day and nobody believes it, or if nobody treats us any differently, then what's the point? And I would argue, along with that chapter in the book, that it's about understanding the nature of the beast in front of you in order to slay it.
Say that again, because I think people misunderstand it. Because a lot of people, well, I'm not going to say a lot of people, because I don't even know a lot of people. There are over 7 billion people on the planet. I don't even know a million. But there are many people, a few people, a handful of people that think by getting out of the system, you can beat the system. That's like saying, in order for me to beat my competitor, I don't need to know anything about my competitor, and I must move away from my competitor. In order to beat your competitor, you got to go onto the playing field. You actually have to play that game. You have to meet that competitor on that field, on that board, on that court, and beat them. You can't beat anybody if you're not in the field of play. If you're not in the field of play, you're not even a spectator. You're an uninvited guest or an immigrant who will be, by history standpoint, removed. So can you please repeat that?
Yes, sir. With the gulf that exists between who we said that we are, who we've found out and realized who we are, and what society or what our government or whoever thinks of us that we are. The only way to slay this beast that's in front of us, that's all around us, that follows us everywhere we go, is to understand its nature. And not only how it operates, but how big, how pervasive, how interwoven it is in order to slay it. Otherwise, like teammates said, it will never happen. You can't win a game if you refuse to play it. Okay? You don't beat another team. If you're a sports team, okay, you're the Indians. Let's just take an example. Playing against the colonizers. You don't beat the colonizers by pretending that you're not going to play their game. You're already in the game. You're going to play it whether you like it or not. Even if you pretend you're not playing, even if you just sit Indian style, ironically enough, and refuse to play, you're still playing the game. You're still gonna get points racked up against you. Okay? You need to learn your opponent. This is why when you see NFL, this is why when you see coaches and they're working with their teams, they're practicing, right? They're practicing and they're watching highlight footage of the team they're playing against so they can understand its nature. They can understand how it operates. That's how they work to defeat it.
Glad you said that, because at the end of the day, this is what people need to realize. And again, this is a point of view. This is a solution. Not the solution, not the only solution, but this is one that I know that works and I can prove it.
That's right.
If you don't know your opponent, then you're not going to beat your opponent. And since this is, the NFL football season, which, by the way, I would encourage anybody who thinks they know anything about business to download the bylaws and constitutions of the NFL. And you'll have a better understanding, overstanding, and understanding of business. And we can actually chop it up if you think you know something about business. I dare you to do it. I don't think you will because you're scared, but anyway, we'll get to that later. We're talking about the NFL season. And what happens is when a team is getting ready for another team, they actually have the non-starters run the plays of their opponent. They have people simulating or acting out certain strengths of their opponent so they can be aware and they can practice against those strengths so they know what's coming. What they don't do is practice against a defense or an offense that has absolutely nothing to do with what their opponent is doing. Why? Because if they do that, they're going to surely lose. So why do I say this? It makes no sense to me. Again, this is just me. Like it or love it. No, love it or hate it. If you got a problem with it, you come see me. It absolutely makes no sense to be banging on your chest, talking about being first about something. You read this, you started this, and you have no solution. You have none. Yeah, you're the first to point it out. Yes, you was the first to bring it to our attention. But then when I ask you, or when the question is asked, what is the solution? And you don't have one, or you block somebody, or your phone cuts out, or you go phantom, or you get ghost. What's the point? You're basically showing your hand. If all we're gonna do is come up here, or any platform, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or whatever, if the only thing we're gonna do is come up here and entertain and merely complain, if that's what we're doing, then maybe under your description, you should put for entertainment purposes only. It shouldn't be for education. It shouldn't be for anything other than for entertainment. Because if all you doing is pointing something out, hell, a blind person can point something out if they can hear it. What are you doing about it? What's the resolution? What's the application? And yeah, I know. You can't discuss what you're doing because everybody's going to know. But see, the problem with that is you've created back chats. You've created mechanisms that are already recorded and archived. So what you're telling me is that the people that need to know, you're not telling them. And the people that you're claiming that don't need to know, you've already not only told them, but it's archived and you can't even access it no more. So what we need to start doing is questioning everybody. No one gets a pass. I don't care if you look like me. I don't care if you don't look like me. I don't care if you sound like me. I don't care if we're in the same tribe. I don't care if we are not in the same tribe. Everybody needs to get questioned because at the end of the day, what we always found out is that the mole is an individual that looks more like you than not. So let's start finding out what people's resolution are. How are you going to solve this problem? Because telling me what the problem is, anybody can point out the problem. There's many different ways of pointing it out. You can use bullet points. You can use slideshows. You can use theatrical music. You can make it a movie production. You could do all of these things. But when it comes to a practical solution that the everyday man, woman, and or child can implement on a daily basis, where are your solutions? And I'm not saying that you don't have them. So please don't get it twisted and don't change my narrative. I just want to know, where are your solutions? That's all I want to know. Where are they? What are you doing? What have you done? Where's the fruit from your tree? You have all these followers, but what are they doing? What have they done? What have they produced? You know, fruit is put in the produce section, right? Irony or not. Something to think about. So, as a forum, as a chat, as people, as the silent majority, we need to start asking these questions. What are you doing? Or, you know, unless we just want to just be cheerleaders for somebody because they have a lot of views and because they can access books that can't nobody else access and they pay for them. But I don't care about all that. I'm not concerned with how big and robust your library is. I'm more concerned about that man or woman that don't know their enemy because you hiding because you scared.
Man, teammate.
I'm concerned about the person that you work right next to that you won't say that to because you're scared of getting fired, but you steadily banging on the people that you work for. I'm more concerned about those people in your neighborhood that are not going to be able to get the benefits they're supposed to get because you too scared to open up your mouth and let them know they're an Indian. Those are people I'm concerned about. I'm not concerned about your followers. I'm not concerned about your views. I'm concerned about your activity. And as always, the views of TMH, Thomas Harrelson Jr., are not those of A2. My address is posted. If you ever have a problem, you want to have a conversation, I beg you, please come see me. I've left you some mic.
I ain't saying nothing to you.
Really? That's what we do.
Peace to two witnesses.
Peace to witnesses.
Welcome to the cab. Welcome to the cab.
Yes, and please don't confuse my passion with anger because I'm not angry. The goal here is to give you a reason why we do this. And at the end of the day, like Bones was mentioning, with what's going on with Spain, France, and England when it comes to colonizing, time and location are important because if you're looking on a Caribbean island for your family and you don't know what time that they were colonized by France, and you're looking under Dutch, or you're looking under Europe, or you're looking under Spain, you won't find your people. You won't, because you're looking in the wrong place. Everything we do here is to help you find out who you are. Period, point blank in discussion. And like I will always say, for those of you claiming that you are something, do me a favor and tell me who you are to your tribe, meaning to your clan. How far can you dig? Because telling me you Cherokee don't tell me anything. Because if you've done any true research on Cherokee, then you know that the Cherokee took on many tribes. That's why they are the largest tribal organization in the United States, because they have many tribes up under their confederacy. So to say that you're Cherokee is a phenomenal start. What clan are you from? What language did you speak? Because you could tell somebody that, again, I'm from DC, or better yet, I'm from New York. Yeah, you from New York. Then when somebody asks you what borough are you from, what you gonna say? And if you can't say what borough are you from, what will a New Yorker say to you? You're not from here. Probably from Jersey. No different than if someone claimed they're from DC and they can't name where they're from in DC. 9 times out of 10, they're from Arlington or Alexandria. And that's not a knock against Arlington or Alexandria. But what it basically boils down to is if you can't be specific of who you are or where you're from, then you're not going to know where you're going. And then you might end up somewhere you have no business being. Exactly, David Coy. Cherokee is a French name.
Do you know where you're going to?
And for those that like to create these narratives and make these statements that nobody knows, I've always found it to be interesting. When you say nobody knows, that basically means you know. Because how do you know that nobody knows? Did you talk to everybody? Did you go back in history and talk to everybody? When people start making these statements, these blanket statements about these tribes, which there are over more than 1,200 of them that are recognized either federally or locally. Well, the tribes do this and the tribes do that. Ask them how many tribes they've actually sat down and talked to, what chiefs they've gone to. And if they say they've talked to them, get the name of the chief, get the phone number, get the address, and then call them out and ask them are they willing to have a 3-way conference call. I promise you, 9 times out of 10, they won't. Because people have a bad habit on YouTube of lying. And a lot of them are starting to get caught. That's just my 2 cents. Question everything and question everybody, even me. Doing this is people fake. It is, because people can hide behind icons. They can hide behind fake cities. They can hide behind fake locations. And it's interesting that I've always found that if you're repping a city or an area, none of your followers are in your area. None, not one. How is that possible? How are you out in the community doing something when none of the people that follow you on YouTube or in your chat are from where you're from? You got videos of everything else and every place else, but nobody from your neighborhood? What does that say about you? But nobody wants to address that because we are still entertaining, because we are scared to call them out. Question. If you're scared to call out somebody that looks like you and that's people, do you think I'm going to trust you with calling somebody else out that don't look like you? I'm going to ask that question again. If you're scared to call out somebody that's scamming people that you know that looks like you, do you think I'm going to trust you to call out somebody else out that don't look like you? You're basically scared of your own self. If you're scared of your own self, why do I need you? Why do I need to be around you? Quite honestly, without trying to be funny, why do you even exist? What are you here for? You should have stopped swimming. Let somebody else hit that egg. That's my point. But anyway, just tired of the games, tired of the lies, tired of people playing, tired of people lying. You crazy, David. Anybody else got anything they want to say? Somebody? Anybody? Nobody? Everybody?
Nope.
Really? Fine. I mean, if y'all know me, if I'm wrong, or if I'm saying something that's inaccurate, by all means, please correct me. Please tell me I'm wrong and tell me why. I mean, I will never have a problem with making a public apology if I said something wrong or I said something inaccurate, because I'm learning and growing just like everybody else. Like everybody that's in the chat, the best chat ever, those that are on the panel, those that are silent majority that are actually listening and taking this information in and doing what they do, and even the new subscribers. We all in this together and we're all learning together. So the reason why I feel the way I feel about scammers is because I wouldn't want anybody to scam you. And I wouldn't put you in harm's way of being scammed, you or your relatives. That's not the way that I operate. So if I sound a little harsh or I sound a little perturbed, is because there are people that are on YouTube that are allowing that. They are supporting that. They are being cheerleaders for that. And then they want you to support their channel. They want you to put money in a super chat. But they're supporting scammers. So basically what they're saying is, I know these people are scamming y'all. I ain't got nothing to do with it. So my hands are clean. And I know they're scamming y'all. And I know they've scammed y'all. And I know that there's proof that y'all have been scammed. But because they have 1,000 followers, 12,000 followers, 16,000 followers, 14,000 followers, and I get to sit on a panel and talk and build with them and make them feel good about themselves, and we sit on each other's panel and braid each other's hair and talk about how awesome we are, but no one's offering any solutions, I'm going to let them scam you. I'm going to pretend I don't see it and then just separate myself from a little while when it happens and then just go away. Is there anybody that would want to be around somebody like that? If you want to be around somebody like that, do me a favor, put some ones in the chat. Because I definitely don't want to be around somebody like that. I don't do scared. I don't hang with scared. I don't associate with scared. And I don't build businesses with scared. And you can't build a tribe or a nation with scared or scammers. Please believe that. Please understand it. And please accept that. David Goy says, I'm going to tell it. We got to clean our houses first before we go building a nation. We got to clean our houses first before we go building a nation. Would you build a nation with a den of thieves? That's the question. Do you want to build a nation with a den of thieves? Because that's what a scammer is. It's a thief. Someone who takes without any regard that it doesn't belong to them. Would you build a nation with a den of thieves? If you would, please stay out of my way. I want nothing to do with you. Exactly, too. And this is, you need to know who you're dealing with. That's the reason why our ancestors got in the situation that they're in now. Being too trusting. Somebody let somebody in through the back door. They came in and wiped everything out. And everybody looking around like, what happened? Come on, man. You can't do that. That's not going to happen. Not over here. Not over here. So, it's about that time for you good people to continue to do what you're doing as far as building your communities. As always, I appreciate everything y'all do. I appreciate y'all coming on, because there are literally millions of YouTube channels that y'all could have watched, and y'all chose to come here with us today. And hopefully we did something right to earn the right for you to come back tomorrow. No sellout. Is there anything you want to say to good people before we head out?
Yes, sir. Appreciate everybody for showing up today, this rising for this show, and participating in the chat. Peace to the panel. And if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, and or corrections, please email us. Email is going to be in the chat. Peace, y'all.
Appreciate you. Your funny bone is huge. Your timing is impeccable, and your words are poignant. And for all those of you who don't, poignant. Yeah. I made a new word. And for those of you who ever listen to No Sellout, please, I beg you, do not ever drink anything while you're listening to them. You might end up choking or dying. We ain't got that kind of insurance. But anyway, moving on.
Wrong pipe. Went down the wrong.
Exactly.
Why is there fluid in my lungs?
As always, the best chat ever. We appreciate y'all and all y'all do. Keep doing what y'all do. Keep holding us accountable. If there's anything that we say, especially me, and it's out of line, or it needs to be checked, or it needs to be corrected, correct it. Say it. Call it out. Ask for proof. Please do so. We are not here lording anything over you. We are learning together. I am not your master teacher. I'm not this supreme individual. I am, I am an individual who's trying to help. I want you to get your tribe right, your clan right, your house right, all of that. So anything that I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to ask. Silent majority. That's exactly what y'all are. But we understand that without you, there will be no us. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing in silence and moving in silence and moving on boulders to create that foundation. We definitely appreciate you. And also to the new subscribers, we thank y'all for coming on. And like I said, hopefully we'll continue to earn your views. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bones H. McCoy, so he can do what he do. And take us out. I'm done.
On that note, like to say, it's always good when we get to kick it with the relatives. No place we'd rather be. And until tomorrow's Rising Show, everyone have a very, very blissful day. And peace.
Man, let him close the show out. Let him close it.
No, he trying to. He's like, hold on. I'm with my daddy. I'm finna close the show out.
Okay.
Now you want to get shy. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
You should have just went over to him. Like, here you go. While you talking to him and quiet.
Oh,
That's little bones, David. That's little bones. Little bones.
it's no, because I put you on the spot.